Does this sound familiar? You've had your laptop for maybe 3 years, maybe 5, maybe more than that. And with all the updates on your operating system and just everything else, it just doesn't seem to be, shall we say, as efficient as it used to be. And if you haven't replaced it already, the battery doesn't last as long either. So you've started thinking, it's time for a new one. I mean, after all those advertisements, shiny, right? So let's just pull our drive out of that laptop, keep our data, keep our personal information safe, then drop that old obsolete piece of junk off at the local e-waste recycler, right? Wait a minute. In philosophy, and in particular in the discussion of ethics, there's a concept called a categorical imperative. Quick and dirty, the idea is I should live in such a way that I could wish that everyone else would live the same way. Now, you might argue whether reducing and eliminating e-waste is such a categorical imperative. I'll let you do that on your own time over a cup of coffee with your other philosophically inclined friends. To study the idea more, if that interests you, just look up Immanuel Kant and the categorical imperative and the hypothetical imperative. You'll find out more about it. But that's not the point of this video. The point is, I believe we should try to reduce e-waste. And I think you probably agree. And I want to offer you some tools so that you can keep that old laptop out of the aggregate of e-waste that's exploding exponentially. So please, watch this video before you take your aging laptop to the recycler. Hi, I'm Dave, User Geek on this channel, and my videos are all about things that you can do with tech. Thank you for your interest. If you find my videos interesting or helpful or just humorous, I do appreciate seeing the thumbs up, and I respond to questions and comments, and new subscribers are always welcome. The fact that you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. You'll need to make that evaluation for yourself. It's a subjective matter. And thus, at most, it would be a hypothetical imperative. Again, philosophy topics beyond the scope of this video. What I do intend to do with this video and a few more in this series is show you some ways to put some new life into that aging laptop. This video will not apply in all cases. Sometimes tech just dies, and there's no reviving it. Sometimes reviving it is beyond your skill, or the cost is unreasonable. You'll need to weigh those circumstances and determine for yourself the best course of action. But if it's just a matter of aging, that's another matter, like the IDE interface or the floppy drive. And I have some options that can revive even quite old hardware. I have on hand 4 candidates for rehab. 2 were computers that I had bought, and 2 were given to me when the previous owner had decided to upgrade. As I said, I had wished to avoid contributing to e-waste. This video will introduce those 4 laptops, which range in age from 15 to 20 years, and also what I anticipate will be involved in the rehab process. The next videos in this series will concern each of them as I try to do rehabs on them. The first candidate is a Dell, which I received from a 501c3 when they chose to replace it. Already, they had upgraded this particular laptop from Vista to Windows 7. Losing support for Windows 7, they chose just to replace the whole computer and the operating system in one fell swoop. Now, I need to check the installed memory. If it can be upgraded, I may choose to do so. The SATA, or serial drive interface, makes this a very easy upgrade from the spinning drive to an SSD. The second candidate is a Gateway, of which I am the original owner. I replaced it with a Dell laptop in 2012, and I just hung on to this old one. I believe that I have already upgraded this one to a full memory capacity, and the CPU is 32-bit architecture. The drive is parallel, sometimes referred to by the acronym PATA, P-A-T-A, sometimes by the acronym IDE or even EIDE. Each of those acronyms means something different and refer to different things, but in terms of drives, they mean essentially the same drive. Both of these factors, 32-bit and IDE, make this particular laptop a little bit more of a challenge, though I do think it's likely to be a very usable machine like the previous one. The next Dell laptop is another that was given to me. It had just been sitting unused and taking up space, so I offered to take care of it. This, like the previous, is 32-bit architecture, and it had a version of XP on it as its original operating system. Again, like the previous, it is of the previous generation of drive interface, not SATA. And so it's going to face some of the same challenges, but it is likely to be as useful as the gateway. The Toshiba was bought in Montana during the winter of 01-02. I remember it was a very cold trip from where I was living in a neighboring state at the time, and it had a hard drive failure almost immediately, but the store where I bought it was good about replacing it, and I had no trouble afterward. Again, like the previous machines, 32-bit and PATA or IDE interface, and I already know that I had upgraded the memory on this computer to its maximum, and I'd upgraded the operating system from ME, which I hated, to the more stable and secure Windows 2K or Windows 2000, which was the next generation of Windows NT. For some time, I had been wanting to try out Linux, just never getting around to it. And at one point, a nephew had set me up with a Linux operating system on a computer. I don't recall the particulars now. But in 2008, I began exploring more earnestly and playing with Puppy Linux on this machine. I just discovered that it still had the live CD in the optical drive, and it booted right into Puppy without a problem when I turned it on this week. But running a live CD on a system this old is not a very satisfying experience. In fact, it's not a very satisfying experience even on a more recent machine. But I wanted to see how it will do with upgrading some of the hardware. Will it make it usable? Now, originally I thought this would be the most challenging, and still it may be, but Puppy was able to handle the PC MCIA card for Wi-Fi that was in it, and I connected to the home network with no problem. I could see the World Wide Web with no problem. So I expect this will not be as much of a challenge as I initially thought it could be, even though this computer is 20 years old. So what am I looking at? Looking at them by year, the same order that I just presented. Cost of rehabbing these laptops each needs a supported operating system. I'll be using versions of Linux on them. Each of them needs a battery. That will be the largest cost. Using Kalon, that's K-A-H-L-O-N, or other sources, I can get the batteries for them for in the neighborhood of $50 to $60 each. All of them but the 2006 need some kind of adapter. 2006 has a SATA interface, but the others will need an adapter in order to use an SSD. These adapters are not terribly expensive, and I don't need to buy one for each of them at the start. I can try it out and see what happens with it before I move on to the next one with the same hardware and just keep on trying it out. My options for the adapters are for an mSATA SSD or for an M.2 SATA, and I do have on hand a SATA drive for the 2006, and I have an mSATA card, and I do have an M.2 SATA card readily available, so I don't have any out-of-pocket costs on any of this upgrading that I'm looking at doing. If or when I decide to put them into service, or if I find someone who needs one, I can make the investment at that time. But I wanted you to see, if you were taking on one of these projects, your cost to keep the device out of e-waste would be less than $150 each. Any one of them. Now in the next video, I'm going to show you the very easy steps for the 15-year-old Dell, and I'll show you how it performs. After that, I'll do the oldest, the Toshiba, and then gradually work back up the timeline. I do not want to be contributing to this. I take environmental concerns extremely seriously. And yes, I understand that every choice has unintended consequences. But if I can delay by even 5 years something in my control contributing further to the global e-waste problem, even if it costs me a few dollars to do so, then I consider it my responsibility. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay curious, stay community and environmentally conscious, and you'll see me in another. Well, soon-ish. Thanks for watching.